Hi, this is Boki, and today I'm going to be reviewing Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. Luckiest Girl Alive is about Ani Finelli, a successful writer for a women's magazine. But Ani is also hiding a lot of secrets from her past that slowly become apparent to the reader as she starts to participate in a documentary about her high school. So Boston Public Library had a list of books that had been checked out most frequently on 2016, and this was on it. And I am a sucker for psychological thrillers about women and expectations and all of that stuff, you know, like Gone Girl. So I figured I should give this book a try. I want to issue this caveat before I start with the review. The idea of unlikable narrators is usually pretty fraught because usually when people say this, what they're talking about are women. They're talking about female narrators usually, and they're usually talking about female narrators who subvert the expectations of femininity. And Ani definitely falls into these lines. She's manipulative and unfriendly and obsessed with status. And I think there's a certain understanding among at least feminist reading circles that women who are obsessed with these things, while agents of their own choices, also have their ideas shaped by society around them that ask them stupid things like, can women really have it all? But regardless of the societal baggage that Ani is carrying, she's also kind of a dick. And when I say she's a dick, I don't mean like she's like Cersei or Lady Macbeth and just kind of wants to like rule the world and subjugate like a couple thousand, maybe million people. Ani is rude to service workers kind of dickishness, which is like, I hope we can all agree is a special kind of dick. But with all of that said, the entire basis of Ani's unlikability, even her rudeness to service workers, is really rooted in ideas of status that are further rooted in traumas for her past. And it's clearly presented as unhealthy for her without actually treating her as a villain for it. And I think that's a really tight balance to strike because the book is told from her perspective. She is the epitome of an unreliable narrator, and yet her own narration doesn't make her come off as sympathetic. Like, you read her mindset and you're like, why are you so terrible? The book alternates chapters so that like the present day kind of successful version of her is constantly juxtaposed next to her high school version of herself, where she's this girl from the wrong side of the tracks at a prep school who's put through the ringer in really horrific ways. There's some traumas that we learn very early on, and there are some traumas that the book builds up to. And as the narration bounces back and forth between these two time points, we really begin to learn a lot about the exchange between her past self and her present self. As we learn more about how her past has informed her present, the point isn't necessarily to justify her actions, but to explain why a woman with her past might wind up with her current line of thinking. What's interesting to me is seeing how over the course of the book, she starts to realize that the rigorous societal structure she has taken comfort in is really not as prescriptive nor as protective as she thought it was. The alternating chapters and pacing really made this book a fast, engrossing read for me. It was one of those books where I started it kind of skeptically, but then got super obsessed with it after like 2 or 3 chapters, and then had to finish it all like immediately. It doesn't mean that it was necessarily a great book, and I actually do have some issues with it, which I'll discuss a little bit in a few seconds, but I do think that it's one of those books that is really good at grabbing you really early on. One of the issues that I do have kind of with how this book is structured is the dynamics of really revealing Ani's past. I don't want to spoil too much, but what I will say are there are 2 kind of big events that serve as linchpins in Ani's past. And strangely, the one that we as readers learn about first is the one that most characters around Ani don't know, and the one that we learn about last is the one that everyone did know. Like, everyone else in the book did actually have knowledge of, except for maybe like 1 or 2 key details that only Ani has kept to herself. So it becomes kind of weird once you finish the book. Ani has had all these conversations with people that are sort of fraught with details of that super major event that you as the reader don't actually know about. Except once you learn it, what that is, the fact that they're not explicitly saying anything starts to make the conversation seem unrealistic. It's the sort of thing that didn't ruin my enjoyment of the book, but it did make me kind of shut it at the end going like, I'm not sure that what I read just makes sense. So another thing, I think anytime you have a book with a first person point of view, flat side characters are a major risk, especially if you have a narrator who is as self-obsessed as Ani is. The book is so much about Ani, but it also but also about the figures from her high school who have lingering effects on her. And I feel like the book is so focused on keeping the biggest trauma of her past a secret from the reader that it keeps present-day Ani from really engaging from too much conversation or thinking on these characters from our past so as to keep us guessing. And the ultimate trade-off is all of these characters from our high school end up getting kind of flattened down into representations of familiar types, like the high school cool clique, the Republican finance fiance, the cool friend, the competitive colleague. Like, it's not until the end when everything starts to get revealed that these characters sometimes get some sense of depth, but by then it's almost too late to have anything mean much about them. At times I also found the book a bit heavy-handed and clumsy with its writing. First off, Ani works at a magazine called The Women's Magazine, and apparently this is like the most successful women's magazine, but it's called The Women's Magazine, which is like the dumbest fucking name I've ever heard for a magazine. This book also does some things that I think are really cliche. It has that kind of attempt at satire about upper class New York society thing going for it, but sometimes the observations are fun, sometimes they're kind of just meh. I think it also tries to do the thing that a lot of similar thriller-y kind of books about people in nice, well-to-do environments do, where they take mundane things and describe them with really vicious imagery in a blatant attempt to make you unsettled by things that you see all the time. So in the first scene, Ani is turning a knife over in her hands and thinking about running it into her fiance. A page later, we learn that the two were at a Williams-Sonoma where they were checking out knives for their registry. I don't know if you missed that. Veneer of middle to upper class domesticity is really just hiding the dark, tortured secrets we hide within. Ani is clearly dissatisfied with this. I don't know, I find this kind of thing like very heavy-handed and amateurish, especially when it's used multiple times in a book. Like, we get it. Rich people have problems. But while I don't think the writing in this book was necessarily top-notch, I did think that the plotting and pacing did a really good job of keeping me invested and wanting to learn more about Ani. Moreover, I really enjoyed seeing how the book played with her characterization and development as a snooty social climber who has to contend with the parts of her past. I do want to say that if you are considering reading this book and are sensitive to plots related to eating disorders, rape, and shootings, this book may be triggering. This book is ultimately more character-driven than plot-driven, but if you are someone like me who usually prefers to read things for a plot, you might still enjoy this because of how it keeps you hanging on to find out more of Ani's past. Even with its weaknesses, I think Ani is definitely a character who will stick with me and challenge the way that I read characters like her. So thank you for watching, and yeah, bye!